The year was 2049. At an observatory in the Arctic Circle, a scientist named Augustine Lofthouse sat all by himself and ate a meal. A flashback to 3 weeks earlier showed the facility being evacuated in an emergency due to some undisclosed global disaster that had obliterated almost all of Earth's population. Earth's surface was now contaminated with ionizing radiation, which was slowly spreading across the globe. Augustine had refused to go with the authorities, since he was already suffering from a terminal illness and didn't have long to live. They had reminded him that without regular transfusions, he wouldn't last longer than a week. During the evacuation, a woman had yelled that she couldn't find her daughter, and her friend had assured her that she saw the girl leave on an earlier helicopter. Eventually, everyone had left, and Augustine was left to spend his final days in solitude at the facility. He watched as the radiation slowly crept toward the observatory. Augustine spent his time giving himself transfusions, taking his medicines, sleeping, and staring up at the night sky. A flashback revealed a young Augustine giving a talk about K23, a previously unknown moon of Jupiter that he had discovered. He explained that the characteristics of the moon were nearly perfect for supporting life. After the presentation, a beautiful young woman named Jean had approached him, and the two began a flirtatious relationship. On their second date, Jean had asked Augustine how much of his research about K23 was real and practical, and how much was nonsense, catching Augustine by surprise. In the present, Augustine checked to see which space missions were still active, and found that all of them were inactive except for Aether, a manned mission returning to Earth after exploring K23. Augustine appeared particularly drawn to a member of the mission named Sullivan. Aboard the Aether, Sullivan, or Sully, woke up and greeted her crew members, Ottawol, Ade, Mitchell, and Sanchez. The crew had been unable to communicate with Earth for 3 weeks. After extensive troubleshooting and attempting to reach every major receiver on the planet, they had failed to determine the reason for the silence. Sully also pointed out that a colony ship headed for K23 was supposed to leave Earth a week ago, but she hadn't been able to contact them either. Meanwhile on Earth, Augustine was making a bowl of dinner for himself, when he turned around and saw a half-eaten bowl already on the table. Suspicious for a moment, he looked around but then assumed that it was a bowl he had prepared earlier and forgotten about. Next, while Augustine was working, the fire alarm went off. He found a fire in the kitchen and managed to put it out. Exhausted, he sank to the floor and found a little girl hiding there. He was shocked. He quickly got on the radio and tried to contact the authorities so they could come and rescue the girl, but he was unable to reach anyone. He told the girl that someone would come for her because he couldn't help her. He was the wrong person. Feeling bad for scaring the poor child, Augustine made her some dinner and asked her questions about herself and her family, but she didn't respond. He assumed that she couldn't speak. She drew an iris to tell him her name was Iris. When Aether came within contact range, Augustine rushed to communicate with them but still couldn't establish contact. He explained to Iris that K23 was supposed to be humanity's next home, but they hadn't been able to launch the colonizing mission in time due to the disaster. Now he had to warn the crew of Aether about what had happened on Earth before it was too late, and they landed on a dying planet. That night, Iris came to sleep in Augustine's room despite his protests. Later, Augustine worked on the antenna and discovered that it simply wasn't strong enough to reach Aether. He had dinner with Iris, but she insisted on playing games with her food, and Augustine went along with it. On the Aether, the captain recorded his log and explained that since they couldn't find a reason for every communication station on Earth being down, they assumed the problem must lie on their end. He confirmed that their mission had been successful and that they had discovered K23 was habitable. Back on Earth, Augustine was performing his regular transfusion when Iris arrived in the room. She lay down next to him, and he showed her the North Star, telling her all about it. A flashback showed a young Augustine working when Jean arrived to see him. She asked why he hadn't answered her call, and he replied that he had been working, without turning around to face her. She was hurt but tried not to show it. She told him not to worry. It wasn't a pregnancy after all, just a false alarm. Augustine still didn't turn around or show any kind of reaction. Crying, Jean said she understood that Augustine wanted to be an explorer who discovered new worlds and gave life hope, but in doing so, his own life was slipping away from him. In the present, Augustine discovered that the radiation had reached the observatory quicker than he had anticipated. He found another facility further north, a weather station with an antenna strong enough to contact Aether. The journey would be difficult, but it was the only way he could reach them and possibly get help for Iris. He packed his transfusion machine along with other necessities, put protective equipment on himself and Iris, and the two set out. On Aether, crew member Maya relived one of her memories through holographic technology while Sanchez curiously watched. She told him all about her friends in the memory. Mitchell watched a romantic movie and missed his wife. Sully and Aid played cards when suddenly an alarm went off across the ship. It was revealed that there was a navigation error, and the ship had veered off course. The crew began working on charting a new course toward Earth, but it would take them through areas of unmapped space. Aid noted that since they couldn't communicate with Earth, they had no choice but to proceed. On Earth, Augustine and Iris came across a crashed plane. Augustine entered the wreckage and found a survivor. The man begged Augustine to help him, but Augustine realized the only help he could offer now was ending the man's suffering. He shot him. Devastated, Augustine continued the journey with Iris and set up camp to continue his transfusions. A flashback showed Augustine running into Jean, who now had a daughter. Augustine asked if she had told the girl that he was her father. Jean told him that if he wanted the girl to know, he could introduce himself any time. Augustine didn't say anything, and Jean walked away. On Aether, it was revealed that Sully was pregnant with a baby girl, and Aid was the father. The two were in a happy relationship. Back on Earth, Augustine and Iris were driving through a storm when Iris pointed to some silhouettes in the distance. They turned out to be camps, and Augustine decided they would spend the night there. During the night, Augustine told Iris that he wished she would tell him something, anything, about herself. She was busy drawing the face of a woman. Augustine said that he once knew a woman who looked like that. She was loud, unlike Iris, and had the most beautiful laugh. Suddenly Iris looked up and asked him if he had loved her. It was revealed to be a dream. When Augustine woke up, he discovered the entire camp was sinking into the water beneath the ice. He rushed to get Iris out and went back to retrieve his transfusion machine. He managed to grab it, but the ice beneath their snowmobile cracked, and Augustine fell into the freezing water. Underwater, he became separated from the machine as it sank too far down. He swam back to the surface, miraculously alive, and realized that his days were now numbered. Augustine and Iris continued their journey on foot, exposed to the elements and the wildlife. They got caught in a storm surrounded by wolves. Augustine fired his gun to scare them away but lost track of Iris in the process. The storm became too intense for him to bear, and he collapsed. When the storm cleared, Iris found him, and he hugged her tightly. After walking a little further, they finally arrived at the weather station. Using the antenna there, Augustine managed to establish contact with the ether. He spoke to Sully, who was delighted to hear his voice. She asked why no one on Earth had reached out to them. Augustine began explaining the global catastrophe. Unfortunately, before he could finish, Ether, still in the unmapped territory, ran into another asteroid field. The ship's radar and communication systems were damaged. Once they cleared the asteroid field, Mitchell assessed that repairs would need to be done outside the ship. After careful planning, Sully and Maya decided to perform the repairs, with Aid supervising. Since Maya had no experience with spacewalking and Sully was pregnant, it was a risky decision. The three astronauts went outside and began their repairs while Sanchez played music to keep them entertained. As they finished and returned to the airlock, the ship entered another asteroid field. The crew barely held on to the ship and survived, but as they headed inside, Maya noticed drops of blood floating inside her suit. Aid discovered that she had a penetrative wound and was losing oxygen. He rushed her inside while Sanchez ran to the airlock with a medkit. The airlock took too long to depressurize. When they finally removed Maya's helmet, blood floated out, revealing she had already lost too much. Sanchez tried to save her, but it was in vain. She passed away. The ship then received a message sent from Earth 10 days earlier. It was from Mitchell's wife, who said their sons were sick and everyone was being asked to evacuate. She appeared distressed, and Mitchell became emotional watching her. Later he met with Aid and told him that he and Sully should take the ship back to K-23 to start over, but he would take a landing pod down to Earth to look for his wife. Sanchez met with Mitchell and told him that he would join him. He wanted to take Maya's body back and bury her. He revealed that he once had a daughter who died very young. She would be about Maya's age today. That was why he had always seen Maya as a daughter. As Sanchez and Mitchell headed toward Earth, Sully contacted Augustine to thank him for everything, including discovering K-23. She told him he was the reason she became a scientist. He had worked with her mother, Jean Sullivan, and had once given her a moon rock. It was revealed that Sully was Augustine's daughter. She referred to him as Dr. Lofthouse, and he told her to call him Augustine. She replied that her first name was Iris. He responded that he knew, revealing that the little girl who had been with him all this time was a hallucination of his daughter. Augustine asked Iris to describe what K-23 was like. As she told him about it, he imagined himself transported to the planet, standing beside the little girl version of Iris. Finally, radio contact was lost. Iris and Aid realized it was just them now. They began their long journey back to K-23, where they were somehow supposed to restart the human race. No attention was paid to the fact that the whole Adam and Eve model of starting a species was not very practical. What did you think? Did the ending surprise you, or were you expecting it all along? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next movie breakdown. Want more? Check out our recap of similar movie right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.